I'm sitting at my wobbly table. I have an oil lamp sitting next to me. Can you hear me? Oh, wait, sorry. I have an oil lamp sitting on my table. I'm writing in my diary. I'm trying to write down the impressions that I've got on the first day in the village where I was going to stay for the next 3 months, upcountry, the Gambia in West Africa. I had landed there that morning. We sat down with the family elder and the rest of the family, and they prayed to me, to Allah in Arab. They gave me a new name. From there on, I was going through life as Bangali Tunkara. Now, as you can imagine, that's not quite my official name. I got a new one. This oil lamp sitting there, I'm trying to write in my diary. Every 2 seconds, there's a new bug landing on this paper. It's extremely humid. It's very, very hot. I'm extremely uncomfortable, and I knew I was going to be comfortable for the next 3 months to come. Bangulai, one of the older sons of the family that I was staying with, the only one who spoke like 2 or 3 words of, was it Spanish or French? No, sorry, French or English. He comes up to me and he says, "Bangali, do you want to go around the village and explore things?" I said, "Yeah, of course, let's go." We're walking, first time in an African village, first time in a village where there's no running water, there's no electricity, it's pitch dark. There's all kinds of fumes and smells coming up through my nostrils that I had never ever smelled before. Everything was so very alien to me that I hardly knew on what planet I was on. We walk through the streets, and further away there's like a bonfire going on. There's loud noises coming from the bonfire. We walk up there, we turn into the compound, and as I walk in, there's this impressive sight that I will never ever in my life forget. There's a bonfire in the middle, there's 2 or 3 kids of rows sitting around them. They have Quran verses in front of them, and they're reading out their Quran verses out loud. The Imam is sitting there, and as soon as any of these kids goes astray from whatever they were supposed to do, which is reading the verses, he has these kids walking around with whips, whipping these kids. The noise and the fire and everything around is just so overwhelming. I realized later on that at that time I was at the very deepest depths of my culture shock. It's something that you experience when everything is so alien to you that you seriously don't know where you are. So I came over the culture shock a few days after, and I still spent 3 months in the village. I loved everything about it. I loved exploring the new culture, getting to know everything that was so strange about it. Now let me take you back in time to tell you shortly how I got there. I was born on a farm in Holland, in the south of my country, and my father told me 2 things. He said, first of all, reach as high as you can. Presteren, jongen, presteren, for the Dutch among us. And I managed to do it, education-wise especially. I fulfilled at least his dreams, and I think a few of mine as well. But he also said, be sensible at the same time. Don't do any stupid shit. About the second one, I don't know. I will tell you now. So I grew up on a farm. I always wanted to go out and explore new horizons, but we couldn't go very far, right? We had cows to milk twice a day, so neither my father, neither me, we could go very far. But this was about to change. Since I reached higher levels of education, ended up at university, at least I ended up going out of my village, onto the next city, 20 kilometers away, onto Wageningen University, some of you may know that, which was on the other side of the country. And Wageningen is also a very good place to be if you want to go international, because everybody there flies out and goes out all over the world. And so did I, in the end. I did this thesis project, which is the project that I just told you about, upcountry in Alunhari. I did another thesis in Sweden, and my dad would always come after me. He was living his urge for adventure vicariously through me, saying, okay, if my son can get out, by the time we'd sold the farm, by the way. He came to visit me in Sweden, and he came to visit me in the Gambia where I was, etc. So he kept on going after me. I graduated from Wageningen after doing another thesis somewhere else, and then it was time to get serious. My father told me, be sensible. Now it was time to get a job, so I couldn't keep doing adventurous stuff. I still did. We bought cars in Holland. We drive them across the desert and sell them in Africa. We managed to squeeze those 2 adventures in there as well. But then I started applying for jobs, and I thought, am I going to apply for jobs in Holland? Is that what I want to do? Do I want to stay here? I have to tell you, I never looked properly at these job applications because I wanted to go out. Well, lucky me, there was a job offer in Africa, working with the United Nations in my field of studies. I couldn't have done better. So I called up my dad and said, Dad, look, I'm going to go to Africa. Who is it for, son? I'm going to work for the UN. Oh, that's perfect. That sounds like high up. I think you've done well. And I'll come and visit you. Yes, I think you will. And he did. I ended up in Africa working there, but there's one anecdote before that time. I remember sitting at my desk. I'd already gotten in the job offer. I was sending out my first email. We're talking 1996 here. I got my Hotmail account and I fired off my first, you remember Hotmail? And I fired off my first email saying, okay, thank you for the job. I'm really thrilled to go working for FAO, in this case, the United Nations. And I said, but I have an offer to make you. I have a proposal. You can keep the money for your ticket, and I'm going to buy my own car and I'm going to drive it over there to Accra in Ghana. I can only imagine the faces of the people on the other side saying, look, hey, Clark, here, there's this guy who wants to drive over there. Surprisingly, the answer was no, that is not done within the UN. But maybe, just maybe, this was a first indication that me and the UN were not quite the perfect match. I fulfilled my term, 2 years. I was going to do another 2 years afterwards. The second half of that term, I was already like, is this really my thing? Don't think I was internally that motivated by the job. And in the end, it was an office job, right? I was being a civil servant. I was being an international civil servant. That's very thrilling, but it's still a civil servant, office job. And I thought, lucky me, next step was Bolivia, the second term. And I got to get into a new culture, new language, new job, and I was thrilled to go there. Now, right at the beginning of that job, I had bought an XR400, an Honda XR400. That's a dirt bike. And I started roughing it out with my friends around Sucre, where I was living at the time. And that was the real thrill in my life. Now, this job, I still had to do it right. I was going along with everything that I was supposed to do, but I remember traveling and then coming back, and then you would have to write something that's called a back to office report, a BTO. And I was sitting there writing the back to office report, and I was like, and yet again and again. And after at 5 o'clock, I was finally able to close the office and go home, and that's when I started living. Because I'd come up with a new plan. Since I like the dirt biking so much, I thought, okay, that's the thing that I'm going to turn into a living. I am going to do a long distance motorbike travel tours with people coming from outside into Bolivia, flying in, and I will take them around Bolivia. Bolivia is a spectacular country for motorbikes. And I started preparing for that. In my living room, there were 4 XR400s sitting, brand new. I bought the Toyota pickup. And the only thing that was lacking was to convince my father that this was my new idea, a good idea. And he said, be sensible, son. I called him up and said, Dad, you know what I'm going to do? I'm not going to continue with UN because it's really not my thing. I'm falling asleep. I'm going to do long distance motorbike, blah, blah, blah. Silence on the other side. He said, son, that's a crap idea. Are you serious? Are you going to give up a UN career for this thing? That's not going to work. That's not very wise. I said, no. And he said, is there any way I can stop you from doing it? I said, no, I don't think so. He was on the other side. He was in Holland. He was not going to stop me. And so I did. I finished the job with the UN. I was repatriated back to Holland. I bought the one-way ticket back home. First time I ever bought a one-way ticket, not knowing if I'd ever be coming back. And at the same time, I bought a bar from Holland, came back to Bolivia, had the plans for this motorbike company, and I had the bar coming up. We had to remodel it or whatever. Surprise, surprise, I never did any long-distance motorbike tours with anyone because the bar took over. Now this bar thing that started growing and it grew into a big operation. Within the 8 years that I ran it, I ended up buying the real estate with money borrowed from my dad. And he was like, where's this money going? What are you actually doing? Turned out all well. The bar we had a slogan for the bar, which was Joyride. It's still working, by the way. Joyride, the best bar in town, probably the best bar in town after the Carlsberg ad. And then I said, and then two lady friends of mine from India came over and they said, what you've built up here, Gert, is pretty admirable. It's an empire of sin. Out comes my dad, and he comes to visit me for like the third time. I take him around town, we go out biking, whatever. And then at a certain point, we're sitting there at night. We're having a barbecue, throwing a barbecue with all the friends. He's sitting there, he's cracking jokes with my friends. And he says, Gert, son, I see you now sitting here. I see you having a good time with your friends. I see what you've built up here, and it's pretty impressive. So for the first time in my life, I know that you're not going to be home back anytime soon. And I think I'm okay with that. And I said, I think I'm okay with that too. Thank you.